This is 46-year-old Gregory Rice. He was shot and killed on the night of October 2nd, 2020. For the next 5 weeks, Gregory's body remained hidden, concealed in a place no one thought to look. His family searched desperately. Police issued warrants and combed through rural back roads, but found nothing. 5 days after the murder, while authorities were still searching, 37-year-old Christopher Dontell walked into a local Lowe's. He bought a blue tarp, zip ties, and cinder blocks. But these supplies weren't for a home project. They were for disposing of Gregory's body. For over a month, it seemed like the perfect crime. Then, a routine fishing trip broke the case wide open. On the early morning of November 8, 2020, Donna Sue Souls and her family were catfishing in Little Petey River near Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, when they made the gruesome discovery. Floating in the water was a partially submerged blue tarp. Curious about what it was, Donna used a paddle to lift it. The silhouette was unmistakable. It looked like a human body with the legs and head tied with ratchet straps. She dialed 911 and officers arrived at the scene. When they sliced the tarp open, the decomposition and stench shocked even the most seasoned investigators. The man had been shot 5 to 7 times at close range. Bullets had torn through his head, chest, hips, and thigh. The body was identified as Gregory Rice's through a combination of prior missing person reports and forensic examination during the autopsy. But to understand how Gregory ended up wrapped in a tarp at the bottom of a river, investigators would need to trace back 5 weeks to the night he disappeared. Gregory Rice was last seen alive on October 2nd, 2020, leaving work around 8 p.m. near Flint Lake Drive in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. His phone last pinged at his Arrowhead apartment complex shortly after 10 p.m. No one heard from him that night. He missed work without explanation. Calls went unanswered. Family obligations that Gregory never skipped simply went unmet. For those who knew him well, the sudden silence raised immediate alarm. 3 days later, on October 5th, Meagan Jackson walked into a Horry County police station and reported Gregory missing. She appeared genuinely anxious and cooperative, portraying herself as a concerned ex-partner, desperate for answers about the father of her children. Investigators listened carefully, but at the moment, they had no body, no crime scene, and no concrete evidence that foul play had occurred.
Right. M-E-A?
M-E-A-G-A-N.
What's your last name?
Jackson.
Jackson.
How long were y'all married for?
We weren't married.
Weren't married. How many kids you got together? Just curious.
4.
4, really?
I was with him for like 15 years.
How long y'all been separated?
Over a year.
Over a year. So.
And you talked to Greg on the phone at about 9:58, you said?
Yes. And I told him that I was still good for taking the kids to your house in the morning. He said yes. And everything was fine.
That was the last time you spoke.
Yes.
To piece together what led to Gregory's death, detectives began examining the complicated web of relationships that surrounded him. Gregory Rice and Meagan Jackson shared 4 children and a long, tumultuous relationship in Horry County, South Carolina. By the fall of 2020, the couple had separated, but distance did little to ease the tension between them. Friends and family described constant disputes over parenting responsibilities, finances, and accusations of drug use that had simmered for years. Their children would later describe Gregory as a devoted father who prioritized his kids above all else. At the same time, Meagan Jackson had begun a secret affair with Christopher Dontell, a deputy coroner in the Horry County Coroner's Office. Jackson worked as a body transporter, while Dontell investigated suspicious deaths. Their professions gave them unique access to funeral homes and mortuary facilities, access that would later prove critical to the investigation. Dontell was still married with children of his own, making their relationship all the more risky. The affair would soon spiral into violence, triggered by a series of anonymous messages. In the weeks leading up to Gregory's murder, Dontell's wife, Erica, began receiving anonymous text messages. The messages revealed the affair and claimed that Jackson was pregnant with Dontell's child. The texts appeared to come from an unknown source, and Jackson quickly blamed Gregory for sending them.
Are those the anonymous texts you received?
Yes.
Was that on September 27th?
Yes.
So what did those texts tell you about an affair between your husband and the defendant?
They thought I should know that my husband got somebody else pregnant.
Did it name the person?
Not at first, but then later on it said, oh, and the person was Meagan Jackson.
Was there anything about the way the defendant's name was spelled that meant anything to you?
Yeah. I just felt like it had to be, I even told Chris, like, when it came through that, I was like, this has to be somebody that knows her because they spelled her name correctly, because I've never seen her name spelled that way until I met her. So I feel like if just anybody, I mean, my name's Erica and people misspell that all the time, so I just felt like you have to know somebody to spell their name correctly, so I knew it had to be somebody close.
Did the text give you any indication of how they were able to find contact information for you?
It said that they found my number on a website. It was like special ed or something, like an educational website.
Was there any information about any trips that correlated with any trips that you knew about that your husband took?
Yes, there was. It wasn't like a screenshot or anything, but it was just a flight number and then the 4 names of the people that traveled.
Who were the 4 names, if you remember?
Well, I know it was Meagan, Chris, Savannah, and I think Savannah's friend.
Do you recall what you were doing when you got those texts?
We had dinner plans with my friends, and Chris was on call, so usually when he was on call, we would ride to his car in case he got a call, and then me and the kids would just wait in the car, and so he had just gone into the house when the text message, the first one, came through.
Did they come through over
Yeah, they were spread out, yes.
So what did you do after you got that first one?
I texted him and I said, I need you to get somebody else to cover this call. And I said, we have a family emergency, I need you to come out here.
Did he come out?
Yes.
Did you confront him with the text or show him the text?
Yes, and because it was just from like the free site, he's like, I don't know what this is about, like, this just must be somebody messing with us, but I'll deal with it after the call. Let me finish the call and we'll talk about it or deal with it.
Investigators later uncovered burner app messages, explicit images, and would eventually prove through digital forensics that Jackson herself had sent the anonymous text to Erica. Crucially, the day after Gregory Rice was murdered, Jackson told Dontell she had suffered a miscarriage. With motive established, investigators turned to technology to reconstruct the final hours of Gregory Rice's life. Detectives launched a digital reconstruction of the critical days around October 2nd. They pulled cell site data, license plate reader records, GPS tracking from apps, and location histories from multiple devices. Cell phone records showed that on the day of the murder, October 2nd, 2020, Jackson and Dontell spent time together at Lewis Ocean Bay Heritage Preserve practicing shooting, then went to dinner at Abuelo's restaurant near Coastal Grand Mall. Around 9:14 p.m., they stopped at the Myrtle Beach Funeral Home, where Jackson claimed she needed to retrieve her glasses. After leaving the funeral home, Jackson contacted Gregory Rice and asked if she could visit him at his apartment in the Arrowhead community. Gregory agreed. What happened next was captured not through eyewitnesses, but through a damning trail of purchases and evidence. One piece of evidence cut through the data like a blade. On October 3, 2020, surveillance footage from a local Lowe store captured Christopher Dontell purchasing a blue tarp, heavy-duty zip ties, ratchet straps, and cinder blocks, materials that matched exactly what investigators found binding Gregory's body in the river. Inside Meagan Jackson's work van, forensic teams discovered blood evidence consistent with Gregory Rice, supporting the theory that he'd been shot nearby or transported in that very vehicle. Jackson's phone revealed the motive. Recovered messages showed escalating hostility toward Gregory, wishes for tire sabotage, brake line trouble, and ominous warnings of coming storms. But the timeline presented a puzzle that would leave investigators to an even more disturbing theory. If Gregory Rice was killed on October 2nd, why did his body remain hidden for more than a month? The condition of the remains and the timeline didn't align with an immediate river disposal. Evidence suggested that after the shooting, Meagan Jackson and Christopher Dontell used their professional access to temporarily hide Gregory's body in a funeral home cooler. Jackson's role as a body transporter and Dontell's position as deputy coroner gave them unrestricted entry to mortuary facilities in Myrtle Beach. The body remained preserved there for weeks before they transported it to the Little PD River for the final dump. This calculated delay served a purpose. It bought time, muddied timelines, and gave the appearance of a fresh disappearance rather than an immediate execution. Armed with overwhelming evidence, authorities prepared to move against both suspects. The digital evidence, surveillance footage, and forensic matches formed an unbreakable chain. Horry County authorities moved decisively, arresting Meagan Jackson and Christopher Dontell on charges of murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and kidnapping. Prosecutors alleged that the pair had planned Gregory Rice's killing together and executed a meticulous cover-up to conceal their crime. Christopher Dontell remained behind bars for more than 4 years, watching as Jackson's case progressed toward trial. Then, on December 4, 2024, just days before jury selection for his own murder trial, the dynamic shifted dramatically. Dontell accepted a plea agreement, pleading guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and accessory after the fact. The murder charge against him was dropped, capping his sentence at 20 years. The deal carried one non-negotiable condition. Dontell had to testify truthfully against Meagan Jackson. As investigators continued building the murder case, they stumbled upon evidence of another horrifying crime. Authorities executed a search warrant at Meagan Jackson's home on River's Edge Drive in Conway on November 19, 2020. What they discovered inside added a horrifying new dimension to the case. Police found Jackson's children locked inside bedrooms with no means of escape. The doors were secured with electronic locks, but Jackson had removed the batteries, disabling any internal override mechanism. There were no interior doorknobs. The doors could only be opened by entering a code on an external keypad, a code the children did not know. The bedroom windows offered no escape either. Jackson had installed small padlocks on them and manipulated the window slide tracks, making it impossible to open them. The children were completely trapped. Because they couldn't leave their rooms to use the bathroom, the children were forced to urinate in whatever containers were available, jars, cups, anything they could find. One child told investigators they were fed only once per day. The conditions revealed severe neglect and possible starvation. One child, 13 years old, weighed only 50 pounds at the time police made contact, a weight suggesting severe malnutrition and long-term deprivation. The home had no heat, no food, and no working electricity. Jackson was immediately charged with 4 counts of unlawful neglect of a child or helpless person by a legal custodian. Social workers took custody of all the children. The discovery painted a chilling picture of Jackson's character, a woman capable of extraordinary cruelty, even toward her own children. 4.5 years after Gregory Rice's murder, Meagan Jackson would finally face a jury. Meagan Jackson's trial began on June 9, 2025 in Conway, South Carolina. Prosecutors argued Jackson orchestrated the entire crime by luring Gregory Rice to meet her on October 2nd. pulling the trigger herself, then enlisting Dontell to help conceal the body. The first witness called by them was Jackson's own daughter, 19-year-old Savannah Rice. Shaking and tearful on the stand, Savannah described her parents' rocky relationship marked by separation and infidelity, and how she discovered her mother's affair with Dontell by overhearing them together in the house.
At some point, did you come to know that your mother was having an affair with Christopher Dontell?
Yes, but not at first.
Okay. How did you find out about the affair?
I had some friends over and it was quiet. We went downstairs and we heard them having sex in their bedroom, and it just kept getting louder and louder. And the next day I asked her and she said, "I thought you knew."
The defense centered on a single devastating attack. Christopher Dontell could not be trusted. They hammered his plea deal that erased a life sentence and his clear incentive to blame Jackson entirely. Meagan Jackson never confessed and never testified in her own defense. Her attorneys insisted the prosecution's case rested too heavily on circumstantial evidence and the word of a desperate co-conspirator. Everything hinged on whether the jury would believe the man who helped dispose of the body. The courtroom fell silent when Christopher Dontell took the stand. The former deputy coroner, now the prosecution's star witness under his plea deal, faced his former lover across the room. Dontell laid out the affair, admitted buying the supplies from Lowe's, and confessed to helping transport and dispose of Gregory Rice's body. But he insisted Jackson pulled the trigger. According to his account, on the night of October 2nd, 2020, Jackson lured Gregory to an apartment complex. An argument erupted in her van. She opened the door and fired multiple shots, striking him in the head, torso, hip, and thigh. He told jurors Jackson then demanded his help to load the body, store it temporarily, and eventually dump it in the Little PD River. Under relentless cross-examination, defense attorneys tore into his credibility, highlighting every motive he had to shift full blame onto Jackson. After 8 tiring days of testimony, the jury finally retired to deliberate Meagan Jackson's fate on the afternoon of June 17, 2025. After only a few hours of deliberation, they returned with a unanimous verdict: guilty of murder. Under South Carolina law, the judge had no discretion. He imposed the mandatory sentence immediately: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Weeks later, on July 14, 2025, Christopher Dontell returned for his own sentencing.
Greg Rice's and Meagan Jackson's 4 kids have become an extension of my family. And knowing how badly, knowing how badly they were hurt and that I played a role in causing any pain at all to them is something I'm going to struggle with for the rest of my life. To simply keep saying I'm sorry just doesn't feel right. And I don't know that I can effectively articulate the depth of the combination of love, pain, regret, and compassion I feel for those kids and for everyone who loved Greg. I'm sorry for having any involvement with Meagan. Virtually everything about her is the exact opposite of everything I've ever been and stood for. As embarrassing as it is to admit, I chose to overlook everything bad about her because she was spending thousands of dollars a month on my family, and because she had convinced me that she was basically going to make all mine and my family's dreams come true. In retrospect, it's clear that my involvement with her was founded on deception and selfishness. This led to a snowball of poor decisions on my part, infidelity, and to Meagan having a grip on every aspect of my life. If not for these poor decisions on my part, I know that I would not have been with her on the night of October 2nd, would not have been in the position to be an accessory after the fact, and would not have had any part in causing any suffering to anyone.
Judge Benjamin Culberson noted, It had taken the former deputy coroner nearly 1,500 days to accept any responsibility for his role in the crime. Despite emotional pleas from his wife, Erica, the court imposed the maximum allowed under his plea agreement, 20 years in prison.
Testimony would give you a lesser sentence. And I'll tell you that based on your testimony, the fact that you pled to an accessory and a co-conspirator is your lesser sentence. You very easily could be right where Miss Jackson is, doing life in prison. I will give you the credit for the time that you have served. You're entitled to that by statute. But as to the accessory after the fact, it's the sentence of this court that you be committed to the State Department of Corrections for a period of 15 years. And as for the conspiracy, it's a sentence of this court that you be sentenced to the maximum again of 5 years, and those are to run consecutive. Mr. Dontell, I understand that you're here and want to give the closure to the Rice family, and I hope that this does that. And I hope that ultimately, when you get out, that you will remember what you've done to your own family and what you've done to the Rice family. But that's the sentence of this court. Thank you.
Today, both killers remain behind bars, while the victims they left behind try to rebuild. Meagan Jackson remains incarcerated at Camille Griffin Graham Correctional Institution in Columbia, South Carolina, where she will spend the rest of her life. Christopher Dontell is serving his sentence at a South Carolina correctional facility. The 4 children continue to live with the trauma of losing their father at the hands of their own mother, while also processing the years of abuse they endured in her care.